Hello, my name is Blair. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the Sensory Awareness series. Today is day 2, which means we are going to be talking about some senses that you might not have known that you have. So our old dead friend Aristotle was the first to identify the 5 core senses. Well, he probably wasn't the first to identify them, but he's the one that gets the credit, so that's why his picture is up here. He got us off to a pretty good start with the 5. Thanks, Lil Air, you did a great job. But today, as many as 33 senses can be listed depending on what criteria you're using. Weird aside, but while I was researching for this video, some of the lists of senses that I found actually had ESP as a category. So if you are somebody with SPD and it just really affects your clairvoyance, please sound off in the comments because I would actually love to hear that story. I didn't think it would really be necessary to go through all 33 of them, so for the purposes of this video, I have just picked 5 that I think are particularly relevant in discussions of SPD. So the first one I want to talk about is your vestibular sense, which is also called equilibrioception, which is probably the only word cool enough to justify having 7 syllables. That's just excessive. Equilibrioception relates to your perception of movement and balance. Those with vestibular dysfunction might have trouble knowing when they're moving, in what direction they're moving, if they're upside down or not, things like that. If they're oversensitive to vestibular input, they might avoid things like roller coasters and long car trips because a lot of movement can make them dizzy or sick more easily than the average person. If they're undersensitive, they might not ever feel dizzy. They could ride a roller coaster 5 times in a row, get out of the little cart, and just walk in a straight line out the door. No problem. Personally, I am a seeker of vestibular input, and I am always looking for ways to exist upside down. So the next one is called Proprioception, and this relates to your perception of pressure and force as well as where your body is in relation to other things. Those with proprioceptive dysfunction usually have trouble manipulating objects in their environment, so they would struggle with something like handwriting because they wouldn't be sure if they're holding the pencil too loosely or too tightly. They might make people feel a little bit uncomfortable because their brain's telling them that they're, a good distance away, but they're still standing a little too close for comfort. Or they might spill water on themselves every single day because they always tilt the cup back too far, even when they don't mean to. Not me, though. Not me. So number 3 is Thermoception, and if you know anything about Greek root words, you've probably already guessed that this one has to do with temperature, and you would be right. When you're too hot, you're supposed to sweat, and when you're too cold, you're supposed to shiver, but if your brain doesn't really know when to initiate these processes, the person can end up feeling very, very uncomfortable in any environment that's not completely climate controlled. I definitely fall into this category. I'm very sensitive to temperature changes. People ask me if I'm a hot-natured person or a cold-natured person, and my answer to that is no. So the last 2 that I want to talk about are a little different because they are kind of overlapping, but I think it's important to differentiate them. Interoception refers to your perception of internal sensations. This includes hunger, thirst, energy level, if you need to go to the bathroom or not. Kids with SPD might have a really hard time with this one. People with this form of dysfunction might have trouble knowing if they're hungry, thirsty, or tired. They might take a nap when they really need food, or drink water when what they really need is sleep. Trying to guess what their body needs can feel like playing darts with a blindfold on. Eat a bagel, drink water, take a nap. What do you want? One internal sensation that is extremely important is pain. Pain is a messaging system that the body uses to tell us when something that we're doing really isn't that good for us. From taking off an itchy sweater to yanking your hand away from a table saw, pain is your body's way of telling you, you gotta stop doing this, right now, immediately. And this sense is called nociception. Nociceptive dysfunction is an overarching issue for people with sensory processing disorder, and it connects to all of our senses. We may experience sensations that are technically damaging to our tissues or organs as neutral, or even sometimes as good. For example, I can pinch my arm really hard like this, and although my brain is technically telling me that this is painful, it's not telling me that it's bad. My reflexes aren't causing me to stop. On the other hand, sensations that aren't damaging to us can cause us a great deal of pain, and this is kind of hard to explain to people who don't have SPD. I tend to call it sensory pain. When I hear an aggravating sound, it's not as if my ears physically start to hurt. It's like my brain is telling me that the sound hurts, but I can't map that pain to any location on my body. I'm gonna stop doing this now because it's getting annoying to hold my arm up. So that is it for day 2. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Remember to do something sensational today and tune in tomorrow. Bye. Some people say mental disorders are all in your head. And I say, yes, that's where my brain is. Good job.